However, as far as I know, the people working on innovation policy strategy at the OECD will present a new platform, not for science ministers or technology ministers, but for ministers of finance. This will be very interesting, because will they just put it aside as a footnote and move on to what's really important for them? Or will they take it seriously and see how this can be used as a kind of input to a kind of strategic change of economic policy with a stronger focus on innovation and creativity? I think that will be a very interesting test. I think, as I said before, reform schools so that promote rather than hamper creativity. I think here that the very micro relationship between teachers and students and the method of education and training is perhaps the most important and the most difficult to change. And one reason it's difficult to change is that the world outside has very strong ideas about how education should be. So even teachers with very good intentions are very afraid to do too much experimenting, because then they say, what are you doing with your child? They should learn mathematics, they should learn English, they should learn this, and they should learn this. So what are you doing now? Huh? So I think this is a major challenge. We should think about how can we promote this kind of change. I very much agree with what was said, that creativity is not an exclusive individual characteristic. It can be fostered and learned. And now I'm going to move a little towards what I'm going to talk about later on the next hour, because this is what I see as my own contribution. I'm not an expert on creativity, I'm an expert in innovation. But I have tried to move my focus lately towards creativity, because I realize now that understanding creativity might actually be more important, for one reason, that I see creativity as a very fundamental dimension of what's going on in all parts of society. I'm reluctant to use the concept of innovation for public sector. I'm reluctant to use concepts like social innovation and innovation for everything. But I'm not reluctant to look for creativity in all activities in society. So therefore, I think creativity is, in a sense, a more useful and broad concept, because less and less people work more and more people work in non-business activities. So what I have been trying to do is to link innovation and creativity to working life. Can you read this? Yes, perhaps. Some of you can, or? Yes. Yeah. What we have done is to use some data gathered by an institute in Dublin called the Institute for Working and Living Conditions. They make a survey every 5th year. And they make the survey in all EU member countries. The last one included 29 countries, also the new members. And what we tried to do was to make a kind of cluster analysis of different types of work to try to isolate what we would call creative work. And I have a slogan here I want to mention for you. I would say creation is work. Creation is work. I think, well, the example we just got, it's very hard work. Huh? It's very hard. Creation is very hard work. And the other point which I make here is that work is creative, more or less. Work is more or less creative. Elements of creativity in almost all kinds of work. So what we tried to do was to isolate a category we say called creative work. And we find first that there are many ordinary blue-collar and service workers who do what we call creative work. It's not just a privilege of specific professions which constitute what you call a creative class. I hope I will get the chance to discuss it with Richard Florida, who is the guy behind the we don't completely disagree with him, but we find that the proportion of people in different countries who do creative work is very, very different. And in some countries, a very big proportion of what he would call the working class is actually doing creative work. There is an international variation in Europe between 32% doing creative work, as we define it in Slovakia, and 82% in Sweden. I would say a major challenge for Europe, which goes a little further than what we've discussed so far, is to extend the access to creative work. And it makes it clear that creativity and innovation is not the concern only of artists, scientists, engineers, managers, and policymakers. I think for many people, innovation policy is a very alien concept. It's something you think this is for managers, this is for scientists, and it doesn't have to do with me. I think by focusing on creative work, we can actually show that this is not the case. One of the things we find is that there is a positive relationship between the proportion of creative work and certain institutional characteristics in the labor market. If we have democratic education systems which are open and combine theoretical and practical education in a good balance, we have more creative work in the national economy. If we have more what we call flexicurity, which is a kind of high degree of flexibility, but also some fundamental economics security for unemployed people and strong, active labor markets, we have more creative work. We can show this is statistically significant. So it means for me that this manifesto is going to be about many things with a strong focus on education. But I will also insist that we need to take into account the factors and the institutions that shape the possibility to promote creative work for a growing proportion of people in Europe. Thank you very much.